Alice on the mic, talking life and what's alike. Middle age, it's quite the ride, finding joy and chasing pride. Career dreams and daily grind, funny moments that we find. Letting go of yesterday, making paths along the way. Middle age.
Hey Tim, how you doing, buddy?
Good, Trav. Late night tonight, man.
Yeah, a little bit late. Thank you for accommodating. I appreciate it.
All good stuff. It's good to see you.
You too, buddy. Thank you all for joining us today as we give you the little reminder here of what we're doing. The Tim and Trav podcast is all about the human spirit and people doing awesome things and putting a highlight on those things. And whatever spotlight we might have, we're going to shine it as bright as we possibly can on some extraordinary people. And we've been very lucky so far. And we have another really unique and interesting person in Brent Buell this time around for this episode. And we are very excited. But before we get into that, Tim, did you have any guest comments?
I did. I heard from Alice.
Alice.
I don't know if Alice... This may be her first time writing in, and so thank you, Alice. That means a lot. Guess where Alice wrote in from?
Jersey.
New Mexico. Close.
Whoa.
Very close.
Okay, all right.
Just a few miles.
A few thousand miles off.
So Alice listened to... She's an avid listener, I know, so thank you, Alice, for listening. Alice listened to Yao's episode, however, and she was very moved by it and just said, Yao and his work, so inspiring. So she just shared that. I thought that was really cool that she was, impacted by his message and the amazing things he's done. So thank you, Alice, for sharing that.
Right on. Thank you. And I'm going to continue on. Was that your only one?
Yeah, that was it for me, man. Yeah,
all right, cool.
Thank you.
I'm going to highlight a couple too. Yao clearly made an impact on some folks, and we really appreciate all of you writing in. Jeff, who is a very steadfast listener and dedicated commenter, thank you very much, Jeff. I have to give a special shout out to Jeff too, because he pointed out one of my errors just in making sure, like a quality control thing, and I had a graphic that was up that did not function on the YouTube, and he caught it for me, so I replaced the video. So thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. And he was also very impressed with the last episode. Jim, also a steadfast listener and commenter, he says a lot of nice things, and one of the things that really stuck out from his email was Yao represents the finest of the human spirit, and I could not agree more. And awesome. Nancy, who's been forced to listen pretty much my entire life, she probably withheld more comments than she has given, just out of restraint. But she said, wow, talk about inspirational. I am in awe. Thank you for sharing this. In response to Yao's episode. So thank you all. If anybody has any questions, comments, ideas, we are open to all of them. timandtravpodcast@gmail.com. It's super simple. Again, that's timandtravpodcast@gmail.com. And if you happen to get to the end of this episode and you forgot what that is, just check the show notes. We've got it down there too. So thank you for any and all comments. We really appreciate it.
Trav, if I may add, please like and subscribe.
Oh, there it is. Smash that like button. It does help, actually. It really does.
Now you can't say I haven't done anything to contribute to this podcast.
I've been trying to say that for a while, but you're right. I can't anymore.
Perfect. All right, man. Awesome wife moment. You got something?
I do. Do you know... Well, there's this moment... I'm going to keep this real brief, but it's very important. There's a moment in a movie called Garden State with Zach Braff where Natalie Portman's character has to pull on her ear to give like a heads up, like, hey, it's like the secret message across the room, like, get me out of here.
Okay.
And Kristen and I have a pretty good shorthand, I think, as most married couples do, but her ability to read the room before it even gets to that point is like the most on point thing ever. And it's not in a judgy way, it's not in a bad way, it's just one of those like, hey, you're walking yourself with your big fat mouth into a trap, and don't do that. And she can do it with just a glance. And, I don't think anybody else picks up on it, or maybe they do and they're just too polite to say so. But she's pretty subtle about it, but I can see it. And there have been a couple instances of that as parents where it was just like, hey, I already talked to him about that or her about that or whatever. Let's not bring that up again, because that's, you're walking into a landmine there. So I have to give a lot of credit to her for that, because she not only knows how to read the room, but she knows how to communicate with me in that way of like, hey, avoid this, don't do that. You know, like not controlling, just giving me a heads up. It's like a partner thing, you know?
Keeping you on the straight path.
Exactly.
And she's doing it without tugging on your ear, I would assume.
Exactly. She's much more subtle.
Well, she wouldn't be able to if you keep those headphones on your head all the time too.
It's true. I should do that.
Trav, that's awesome, man. I love what you're alluding to with just as it relates to your partnership.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, really getting to know one another and having that being that close. That's awesome. So
yeah.
Thanks, man. So my shout out for Christy is, I don't know, have you had any Girl Scouts in your neck of the woods knocking on the door with the cookie orders and whatnot?
The call is coming from inside the house. We have our own.
You have your own. All right,
yes.
So you know the drill.
We do.
So Christy, I've shared this in the past, but we're back into that season now. It actually just ended, and she's like closing it all out. I think it probably is on different timelines for different states, geographically located. But man, it's a full-time job. She is not only like the troop leader, but she manages the entire cookie project, and the amount of work that went into getting those things in, getting them back out, all the coordination, all the effort. I mean, she spent hours on it this past weekend trying to close everything up, all the booths, setting all that stuff up. So impressive. On top of everything else she has going on, it's just an amazing feat. And, I give her a lot of credit for her commitment.
She deserves all of it and more. That is a very, very big job. Like there's so many spinning plates to all that, and so much stuff to do, and everybody's looking to you and all that thing. So
yeah, you don't want to mess with people's cookies.
So I've learned. Good job, Christy.
Yes,
I love it. Tim, you want to give us a little bit of an intro on our very special guest this episode?
I do. I really do. I'm wondering if you want to run our sponsor first, however.
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
All right.
Just off the southern coast of Africa is a tropical hotspot with some of the world's greatest biodiversity, Madagascar. Within this magnificently lush landscape, a coffee company was born. Meet Madagascar Coffee Company. With a vision to redefine your coffee experience, these guys are all about next-level quality in your cup, better prices for farmers, and a sustainable supply chain that actually makes sense. If you love coffee, or just need a better cup to get you through the day, check them out at MadagascarCoffeeCompany.com. They've committed to announcing their upcoming sales launch right here on the Tim and Trav podcast. Madagascar Coffee Company. Coffee that does good and tastes even better. Madagascar Coffee Company. Thank you very much. Tim, I don't know if I told you this, but Nancy, the aforementioned Nancy, Mama Gates, actually got me a Madagascar coffee for my birthday, and I'm very excited about it.
All right. We know you love that stuff, and you're right. You're right. So, awesome. So Brent Buell is just a remarkable human being. You spoke earlier about the human spirit and shining a light on awesomeness, and I think he just embodies on every level what it is that you were defining there. I don't really even know what to say. I mean, we'll recap this a little bit afterwards, but I think we should roll this and let the listeners just, hear it for themselves. All right, Trav, here we are, and we are honored to be with Mr. Brent Buell. Brent, you are a playwright, a theater director, a film producer, a novelist. There are probably several other titles that I could give you right now. Your work has been covered by several major media outlets, including the New York Times, including Esquire, including many more. And my first question for you, Brent, how does it feel to be on a podcast with two celebrities?
It's great. I'm very glad to be here today.
We're truly honored to have you, man, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So maybe we could just set the ground first and tell us a little bit about, where you're coming from right now and how you got there.
I'm here in New York City, in my loft in New York City. It's been an interesting journey. I was began in Southern California in a very conservative home, and during the Vietnam War changed my mind about which direction I wanted to go. I'd always wanted to be in theater, but I felt that what was presented to me was very different than what reality was. So God bless people like Country Joe, and rest in peace, who helped change my mind. I eventually had the chance to move to New York City and worked in theater and began to get discouraged because I felt that what was happening was so centered around money that the message was lost. And about that time, my wife and I had a homeless man that was living with us, and I had the opportunity to start working with Reverend Al Sharpton. And that was just such an eye-opener, because between Anthony living with us and working with Reverend Sharpton, who was just great to me, I have to say, I really felt I was in the groove of what I wanted to be doing in terms of changing the world. And we were in jail one night, and we'd been arrested for being in a protest. And Reverend Sharpton said to me, "Don't follow me. Do the thing you feel you're called to do." That was always his message to me. And it was just shortly after that I got a call that was intended for Anthony, who was living with us, asking if he could come and give a talk at John Jay College. And it was from the woman who was the head of the drama department. We started talking. She said, "Come, there's someone you got to meet." She introduced me that night to the person that had founded the program at Sing Sing, who asked me then if I would come and teach. And that was the beginning. And what a joyous thing to have happen, because that brought together the two great loves of my life, justice and theater itself. And from then on, it was just, it's been a great, wonderful experience.
Excellent. I'm going to interject with just a question, and forgive my ignorance here. Is that what founded RTA, or was RTA already running, or is that something totally different?
No, RTA had been founded in 1996.
Okay.
And I came on in 2001.
No, sorry. I just want to make sure that for our guests, or excuse me, for our listeners, that we define RTA. So rehabilitation through the arts, correct? Right. So not everybody may know about that. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that program?
Absolutely. Rehabilitation through the arts is a program that began in 1996 with a group of men that were incarcerated at Sing Sing, who formed a writers group. And they ended up writing a play. And Catherine Vokins, who was visiting the prison, her husband taught there, said to them, do you do any theater here? And that was the impetus to begin a program. You had to have an outside volunteer there to have a program. So that is how it began. That built into something where we were now doing 2 major productions a year and running acting classes, improv classes, all kinds of things in between. So it was, by the time I got there, there was a lot happening, and then there was more.
And can you walk us through, again, for our listeners, just a little bit of context. Brent, you're the co-producer of the film Sing Sing, is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. And obviously you have a very, very personal connection with the RTA program, as well as, that entire background of that. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that came to be as a film and your role in that whole thing? And then we can kind of delve into some of the details. I have a lot of questions about Sing Sing. It's a great film, by the way.
Good. We had done a number of wonderful productions in the prison, and we were trying to decide what to do next. And as you'll see in the movie, this is true, the guys just said, "Look, we got enough drama ourselves. We don't need more drama. Can we please not do another drama? Can we do a comedy?" And so I said, sure. And I went out trying to find a comedy that had roles for at least 25, 30 men and maybe 2 women, because we were the only program in the country that allowed female actresses in to work with the men, but we were limited in the number we could bring. I couldn't find anything. I went back, I told the guys, I'm sorry, I've looked everywhere. I can't find anything that's a good play that meets our needs. And I could see the disappointment on their faces. And I couldn't stand it. And I said, but I'll write you one. And I kid you not, when I left the prison that day, I was absolutely shaking because I thought, I've never promised them anything that I haven't delivered. And now I've promised I'm going to write them a comedy. And I went home, told my wife, and she was like, good luck. This was a Wednesday night. All day Thursday, I just had one awful start after another. I was crumpling up paper and throwing it around my desk. Went to bed, and in the middle of the night, I woke up and I remembered that the men, when they were saying how easy it would be to do a comedy, had said, well, we could do something like Blazing Saddles. We could do an Egyptian comedy. We could do some kind of we could do a cowboy thing. We could do something about old medieval stuff. And that gave me the impetus. I thought, why not just put them all together?
There you go.
And so in 4 days, I wrote Breaking the Mummy's Code, took it in that Monday, and we ended up doing this crazy, crazy time-traveling show. And the pictures, right, one of the pictures from it's right behind me.
Yeah.
First time that there had been men and women dancing and singing on the stage of Sing Sing, if you can imagine, in maximum security. It was a leap. It was wonderful. We had such a good time. And it happened that just by accident that at this point, Esquire magazine had assigned a reporter, John H. Richardson, who came to every rehearsal. About 6 weeks before the performance, he called and said, I'm really sorry, but Esquire is sending me to cover the Iraq War. There's not going to be a story. And, we were all very disappointed because he'd been so good. A week before the performance, he called me and said, guess what? I'm not going to Iraq, and Esquire is so excited about this story that they're not only sending me, they're sending Jake Chesham, the great photographer, with me to cover it. And that ended up being an 8-page spread in Esquire, which was wonderful. And it brought attention to the program and funding to the program, which was very, very useful. But then, 2016, this is 2005, now 2016, I checked my email every night before going to bed, so it was midnight, and there's an email saying we're Greg Quidar and Clint Bentley. Filmmakers were interested in doing a film about your work. I didn't know who they were and thought maybe they were students from NYU or something. I really didn't know. But talking to them the next day, found out who they are, and they're major players.
Yeah.
And we worked from then until 2022, developing the script and having them. They thought they would like to have men that had been in my program be in the show. So I was able to introduce them to all the guys. I said, come to breakfast at our house. That's where they'll be. So they came, and there were about 15 guys here that they met.
Wow.
And they ended up being in the show. And what a miraculous chain of events. Who would have thought, it was never entered my mind that this might happen. But there we were. And eventually Coleman Domingo came on board, and Clarence Macklin and John Whitfield, known as Divine G, all worked together, brought together the script, and we shot. So there are a lot of stories about it, and I'll be glad to tell you anything.
Yeah, sorry, Trav. Brent, 2005, the publication came out in Esquire, right? So you wrapped up your show in 2005. So 11 years later, you hear from these guys that they want to turn this into a film.
Yeah.
And totally unexpected. You hadn't done any work to promote this or to push this or anything during that 11-year period.
Not at all. In fact, I was not teaching with RTA at that time. I was primarily working with men that were coming home from prison. And we had men live with us as they came home, because the whole subject of transition is a mighty one.
Sure.
And I had gone back to my work commercially producing theater in New York. So it came as a complete out of the blue. There was not even a passing thought about it being a possibility.
And the filmmakers that came to you, did they just happen to come upon like, were they looking for something of this nature? Were they, just happened to be scrolling through an old online article? Or like, how did that work? I mean, 11 years is a long time. Like, how did that work?
They had been making a film about men training dogs in a prison in Texas.
Yeah.
And they thought, this subject of rehabilitation is really interesting. And so they put into Google, the brain we all use, prison rehabilitation. And the very first thing that popped up was the Esquire article.
Awesome.
And they read and they said, a madcap comedy in the midst of a maximum security prison. There's got to be a story here. And that's how it all began.
That's so cool.
Yeah, we have to go there now, because this is just, I'm so fascinated by what occurred in that space, by the relationships that were built to get to where you were. Can we talk a little bit more about, and I know, in conversations with you, what those relationships mean to you, what those men mean to you. 2005, this production went on. How long were you working, and how much time did you have, to really get to know these guys prior to that event?
I had been working there since 2001.
Okay.
And generally, I was there once a week. But to give you an idea, because I had been arrested a number of times with Reverend Sharpton, I sort of thought, okay, I know the ropes, I know what this is like. But then when I actually got to Sing Sing and went through about the fourth big steel gate, I knew this wasn't jail, this was prison.
You mean when you were going in as a volunteer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the first night, I was supposed to have 2 other volunteers with me to run the program. They said, don't worry, we'll introduce you. You'll just introduce yourself, and then you can sit down and watch the rehearsal, because they were already working on a play. We got there, and through a series of events, both of the other people had to go to other meetings. So they said, well, go on in and introduce yourself and run the rehearsal. So
this your first night?
In my first night.
Welcome to it.
I guess I had enough stereotypes in my mind of what prisoners were like, that I was a little nervous. But I remember saying to myself, I work with New York actors every day. How different could this be? So I opened the door and walked in. There were about 50, 60 guys in the room. I was the only white person. And that felt good to me, because I was so used to that being the situation. Thanks to Reverend Sharpton, I'd gotten a very great education. I introduced myself, but for some reason, I made the mistake. Usually I would have started with an acting exercise, but in this case, I started saying, okay, let's do an improv. Just everybody come out, act like you're going to be in the yard and greet one another. And so the guys got up and started, yo, what up, and everything. Don't ask what got in my head. I said, okay, a beef breaks out. Thinking maybe 2 guys would call one another names, or there would be a little shoving around. Instead, out of the middle of the group comes this guy about 5'8", muscle from head to toe, with his eyes locked on me like a tomahawk, coming straight at me going, you got a problem, and started to curse at me. And I remember he was running towards me, and I thought, he's either going to kill me or he's the best actor I've ever met. And I'd better go with the actor. So I came right back and I said, yeah, I got a problem with you. And we cursed at one another and we're ramming one another's chests. It got intense, and I was running out of words, because I couldn't think of more curse words to call him than he could call me. And we're just smashing into one another and everything. And One time he hit me really hard, and I backed off, and I looked at him, and I said, "Ya mama." And I could hear the whole room just go, and he said, "You are a dead man." And he came charging at me. And I closed my eyes. I figured this is it. And then nothing hit me, and I heard, and I opened my eyes, and the whole room was applauding. And that was my initiation. That man, that dear man, who has become like a brother to me, said, "Wow, that was great. Here, pull up a chair, man." And if ever relief is a great emotion, I had it that night. But what built from there was an understanding of the human beings behind walls who have been forced into those situations, confrontational situations on a daily basis, who are longing for an approach that is human. And the fact that I was there and had that opportunity to get to know people on a one-to-one basis and come to care for them on that one-to-one basis is, first of all, it's the great honor of my life, but it's also something that I have a responsibility to have people know. Those are real people behind walls. And when given the opportunity, tremendous, tremendous things happen. And maybe I can just jump in here and say, in the United States, 60% of people who are released from prison are reincarcerated within 3 years. If our prisons were factories building cars and we had a failure rate like that, we'd have closed them a long time ago.
Yeah.
In this program, over 30 years, with thousands of men going through it, we are under 3% of those men ever returning to prison.
Really?
That's because of the power of what theater engenders in people, and also because of the relationships that are developed that allow people to be people again. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Wow. That's incredible. Talk about the power of the arts. That's such a powerful story of you. I'm envisioning myself in your shoes walking into that room. And obviously I don't have the background that you do, but that, I mean, the bravery that it took to even start the conversation, much less go the acting route, because I'd probably need to change my pants if I were in your shoes. But in terms of how you worked with all those folks throughout the years, did it evolve from there by the time the reporter and everything came in? Can you talk to us a little bit about the evolution of your relationships within that room and how that may have affected you in the same way that it affected them, or a different way?
Absolutely. I mean, at the beginning, it's just a matter of learning people's names and
that's a lot of people.
them.
Yeah.
But it very rapidly changed into something that was clearly so much deeper. And I've never walked into a room where I felt so immediately loved. Everybody had to give you a big hug, and it was like welcome. It was very visceral. And I remember I'd probably been going in for maybe a month, something like that. Cornell Alston, who is the man who came at me that first night, came up to me and he said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Sure." And he goes, "Well, not here. Over there," and he pointed to a corner that was private. And he said, it's clear to me that we're becoming friends, but I don't want you to become friends with who you think I am. I want you to become friends with who I am. And there's some things I need to tell you. And I never asked men about why they were incarcerated. That is not important to me. But he wanted me to know why he was there. And it was one of the bravest acts I have ever experienced or had ever experienced to that point in my life, with a person just bearing his soul about who he was and the regrets and what he carried with him in terms of responsibility and regret. And when he finished, he looked at me and he said, so who do you see now? And I said, I see a courageous friend. And that just built from there. And that was true of everybody that I met. I did not meet people who said, yo, man, I'm here as one's supposed to be, I'm innocent, whatever. I had 5 people tell me they were incarcerated for something they did not do. All 5 of them have now, 30 years later, been exonerated or released with their charges dropped. Exoneration is a different thing. You have to fight for the exoneration because the state never wants to pay you for the years they falsely incarcerated you. Divine G, John Whitfield, who Coleman Domingo plays in the film, is in that situation. He was released after 26 years with the charges dropped, but they have not issued his exoneration. And that's something we're fighting for now.
I have to tell you that performance that he gives in that film is just incredible. I was telling Tim before, one of those things where there's so much that rides on him as an actor and as a character. It's so centric to him, and he does such a powerful job. And the moment that he's in that meeting, forgive me, I can't remember the term. Basically, when they're reviewing in his parole hearing. Thank you. It's so powerfully done and so well done that you feel like you're in the room with him, and your heart is breaking at the same time his is. And the story that you all put together is so incredible. I don't really know how you tell that story without, with the gravitas that you did. It was just an incredible job that's such a personal thing. And I'm curious to know, with all those things, you have to walk into that room, and as a storyteller, it's like, well, there's a million opportunities here, so which one do I choose? How did you hone in on that particular storyline?
That is thanks to John Whitfield and to Coleman and to Greg and Clint. I did not write the script. I was, as you said, there are a million stories, and I spent years telling them stories about what had happened, and from those they were able to get a picture of what the overall was like. And then they chose the things from their own experiences, and it happens that parole hearing is a verbatim transcript of one of John Whitfield's parole hearings.
That's incredible.
And they really did ask him, so are you acting?
That moment is just, and he performs it so well. His reaction is so beautiful. It's just so real.
That Coleman could step in as a man who had not been incarcerated, and immediately with the other 14 men who had been, simply become part of the family. And so beautifully. And if people could have been on set and watched it, it was a wonderful thing, because it was the way it was when I was teaching inside. It was a brotherhood.
Yeah.
And Coleman was so beautifully in the moment and in the character of Divine G that, I was rooting for him for Best Actor. He should have gotten it because he was just brilliant.
I have a question, and Tim can probably speak to this better with his time in the theater. I don't personally have that, but I have been on a few film sets and so forth. The thing that I find really unique about the work that you've done with RTA and programs within the incarceration system, the thing about theater to me is that it's a very welcome group. It's kind of one of those, you get to come in as your authentic self, and that's what makes everything great. And people really value, or at least what I've experienced on my end, is that people really value your take and your uniqueness. And I kind of half jokingly say, a lot of what I see in the dramatic arts is you're allowed to let your freak flag fly a little bit. It's a somewhat judgment-free zone, right? When you're all kind of working toward the same goal and everything. How does that translate into the prison system in that space? How did you foster that within Sing Sing of all places?
That thank you for that question, because that is so important. It was very easy to forget what the men were facing outside of the walls of our classroom. And to fully comprehend, I'm still comprehending it, to tell you the truth, because even after they come home, I'm hearing stories about what men went through. But when they came into the classroom, it was a safe space. It was a place where nothing that is said here is going to go outside. This is for us. We did not have corrections officers in the room.
I noticed that in the film, yeah.
Yeah, we were on our own, and thank God, because the men were able to, and very often when I would come in, planning, I'd think, oh boy, we've really got to work on this scene tonight and get that out the window, because we'd come in and, so-and-so just went through this and he needs to talk about it. And that's what we would do. And the trust that built up, and the ability for people, as you said, just to be themselves there. We knew things about one another that were, a group of guys on the outside have not been that open with one another. This was something remarkable. It's something that I treasure, that we can still have as we get together, but it's something I miss in general casual friendships on the outside. It's not the same. And it goes to the deepest things. In the film, Mike passes away. In reality, we had a young man, 19 years old, that was part of the program. And I came into the prison for a rehearsal. I was met in the hallway, and they said, something to tell you. He died. He was lifting weights. He had a brain aneurysm, and he died. But we know we have to get this play ready. So go in. We have a letter to his family that we've written. We want you to sign it. Don't cry. Don't say anything, because all of us will just break down and we'll lose the whole night. So come in and just run the rehearsal. And I went in, and, everybody was just standing and watched me sign the letter to his family. And then they said, okay, let's begin. And there were things like that were so, I don't know, kind of overwhelming, because one of the guys said to me, he says, we did this, but we're all going to go back and hang a towel on our bars tonight and cry ourselves to sleep, because he was someone that was loved in the program. So it's there, that kind of, showing the emotion and the things, you don't always get that with a group of guys. You go out bowling and,
Yeah.
hey, sorry your wife died, see you next week.
Right, yeah. Man, the authenticity really comes through in the film, I have to say. It's that's a tough thing to do, frankly, to translate. Can you talk to us a little bit about, I find this really interesting, when a real life character, especially somebody who's actually involved in the project, is being portrayed on film. And am I correct in saying that you are portrayed on film, like your personality and your role is actually portrayed by an actor in the film, correct?
Like Paul Racy.
Yes, which I thought it was great. It was really cool. I was actually wondering before I turned it on, I was like, I wonder if he feels like he did it justice, or like how he, it's kind of a tough thing to watch yourself on film, much less watch yourself being played by someone else on film. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that felt?
Yeah, we had gone back and forth a lot. There was part of the time when I was going to be playing, considering playing the role myself. And with film being what it is, if you can have a name actor, it helps a great deal.
Sure.
And so they had come up with someone that was going to play me, and they said, go see this movie. It's wonderful. And I went and saw this movie, and I came back and I said, if you cast him, I'm done with this project. I'm walking away. I couldn't take it.
We won't ask you to name that.
I was gonna say, that person was Tim Cummings.
Yeah. And then I heard that Paul Raci had become available, and I knew his work from The Sound of Metal. And I had absolutely loved him in that. And they arranged a Zoom meeting, and I'm telling you, in a 1 hour Zoom meeting, he and I became brothers. It was just the most remarkable meshing of two people. And he asked if I had written anything, and I had written a book, it's not yet published, about my 10 years in there. He read the whole thing. By the time we met, he said, I feel I know you. And one of the most authentic, humble people. We'd have breakfast in the morning. He'd say, we're shooting this scene today. How did you react here? Did you get angry? Did you laugh it off? What did you do? And so we had a chance to talk things through. And I just found watching him such a joy. And I remember telling him, he said, it was an honor to play you. And I said, I hope I can live up to the guy that appears on screen. Because I just felt he's wonderful,
Yeah, for sure.
Handled things so much, and the relationship he had with the guys was so much authentic,
Kind of continuing on this thread, if you'll allow me, the one of the incredible things I think about, there's so many great parts about the film, but one of the incredible parts is that you're actually utilizing non-actors, if you will, or at least folks playing themselves. How did you talk to them? Like, did you coach them at all about, like, okay, so we've done the on-stage thing, obviously you've gone through the RTA program, you have some training here as actors, filmmaking is a little bit different, or like, did you have those conversations with those individuals?
The first thing is, I'm very proud. It shows they had great acting training while they were inside.
You did, yeah. I was gonna say, pat yourself on the back. You did a good job.
To all the other volunteers that taught them, they had real acting classes, real improv classes, and then the shows that they did. So their chops have really been honed on stage. But you're right, and there's where Coleman stepped in, because he really helped them gauge the difference between playing to an audience out there and playing to a camera right here, and how to tone down that. And I know Clarence Macklin has talked about that a good deal, how much Coleman worked with him just to have him realize that the difference between projecting out and what's inward that the camera catches happens. And it's to the tribute of the men that they were so natural.
Yeah.
I mean, something people would not ever guess. We only had, because of Coleman's schedule, he had just come off The Color Purple, and he had to go back to do pickups for Rustin. He had 16 days. And Greg and Clint said, we'll take him. And we had to make the movie in 16 days. Coleman got COVID. So Coleman couldn't be there for the first days because he was still,
contagious,
recovering.
Yeah.
So we shot a lot of scenes that he wasn't in those first few days. And then once he came, we completed in that 16 days. And so it was very pressured. But about 80% of the movie was shot in one take. Those men, I've worked on sets where we're doing 30 takes.
Sure, easily. Yeah.
And this was not. They would just nail it, and we could move on. And that was just. And some of those scenes were like the one where they talk about their favorite memory after they've closed their eyes and come back. What was their favorite place? Those were theirs. Those were their improvisations on the spot that they did and came up with so beautifully, sincerely, and authentic.
I was going to say that explains why it was so authentic. If it was theirs, and just for context for our listeners too, what did you say? 16 days.
Yeah.
That's a little less than half of most drama. I mean, and that's being a little bit aggressive. Even
Absolutely.
most films, they are shot not only not condensed to back to back to back, but they're also shot over 30, 45, 50, like it takes a very long time to shoot a film. So 16 days, especially consecutively, is
In 3 locations.
oof.
Where were you filming, Brent? Where was?
The principal photography took place in a prison called Downstate. It was a prison hub where, like, if you were convicted of a crime and you were sent first to Downstate, and then they decided which of the 70 prisons you got to go to. So all of our men had at one point been incarcerated in Downstate.
Oh, wow.
It had just been decommissioned. They were still moving furniture out as we moved in.
Oh.
And this is another tribute to the guys. For them to go back in and put on prison greens, which they had sworn they'd never even wear that color again in their lives, and be in that prison with men dressed as prison guards around them and everything was really, we worried about it for them just in terms of their mental health. And Greg and Clint had counselors there in case the men had problems. So the first day, everybody was a little uptight, but they all said, look, this is for art. This is our mission, so we do it. But at the end of the day, they're about to leave, and Mosey Eagle was supposed to leave the prison and go home with Clarence Macklin. They were going to drive back together. They somehow got separated. This place is like a labyrinth, as prisons are built to confuse people. And he suddenly realized that he was lost. And he said he had this moment of panic. He was like, here he is in this prison. He didn't know where to go. And then he said, all of a sudden, I realized I'm a free man. I'm a free man. I can go any place in this place that I want. And he said it was the most liberating moment that he'd had. He started running up and down the halls and checking things out. And everybody had experiences in some way like that, where it actually ended up being a liberating experience rather than a traumatizing experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was curious to know, especially once I learned that they were actually playing themselves, how therapeutic it was to really play themselves, not only as incarcerated people, but within a space that's like that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, have some of them on and talk to them.
Yeah, we should.
That would be incredible.
That's a great idea. That would be incredible.
Brent, if I approached a random stranger in New York City or somewhere close to Sing Sing and asked them to define Sing Sing, tell me, what do you think of Sing Sing? What do you think they would say?
They
what is its
generally say
reputation?
that it's one of the toughest prisons in the country, one of the most feared in the country. It is a reputation that isn't wholly justified out of the fact that it is the prison closest to New York City, which has been able, because of that, to have the most programs, most educational programs, arts programs, other things. But because of its history when it was first built, the cells were 3 feet by 6 feet. And people could barely not move in their cells. It was built by the prisoners themselves, the original cell block, which is still there. It's not in use, but it's still there. It is also the place where 614 people met their end in the electric chair. And people are very aware of that. I have had the shocking experience of being there, being in the room which leads to it, which is they call the ballroom, which is where the Rosenbergs were held before they were executed, and where he requested before they killed him that he'd be able to have one last dance with his wife. And they danced together in that room. It gets me. And then you walk through a door, and I when I was with the men taking me, we were actually going in. This is now used as a metal shop. The wood shop on the other side where our sets were built, and then this room is in between, and then we go into the metal shop, and you could, don't step there. And I looked down, and I could see the outline of the chair on the floor. And that, to be in a room where 614 human beings were put to death, there's a presence there. Whatever you believe in terms of the hereafter, there's an emotional presence there that is something. So people know this about Sing Sing on the outside, and yet for every performance, we did 4 performances. On the 4th performance, we would bring in 400 civilians to see the show. They were brought in the way any visitor to Sing Sing would be brought in. They were searched, all their cell phones, their keys, money, everything taken away from them. It was traumatizing to a lot of people, but ultimately an eye-opening experience that changed their lives, because they had a chance to meet these men and talk to them and see them perform and have a change in how they thought of these people behind bars.
Yeah.
Seeing that they're human beings. So.
To follow up on Tim's question, is there anything out there that you would dispel, or how has your opinion of Sing Sing before and after changed in terms of your experience within it? Or has it changed?
I think that in some ways my opinion is worse. I met some corrections officers who were very good. I met a superintendent who was very good and worked to try and have a human approach. But that is something that is so needed. And after the recent strike and things and the cutbacks that have happened in the country, the conditions in our prisons is woefully worse. And this really is a painful situation. Because you have fewer corrections officers now, there's more pressure, the men are locked up more, it's recreation is at a minimum, everything is down. My opinion of the men in prison is so high. I mean, I know what can happen. If a person is treated like a human being, they have a chance to become fully themselves. And I'm narrating a film right now called Freedom for All, directed by Dara Barlin, which is about a new approach to governing prisons. It's a whole new approach to administration, going from the I am God, you are nothing approach to one that is truly a humanistic approach. So that is what is so needed. I mean, I feel our prisons are horribly off base, just terribly off base. You look at some of the European models where people are treated more humanely, the success rate is so much higher. You can't take a person and lock them up and treat them like an animal and expect them to walk out of that prison going, well, that was great.
Rehabilitated now, right?
Yeah.
Huh. That's such a good point. It makes me very sad to say that when you're talking about treating somebody as a human, it's somehow it's like, I don't really even know how to put it into words, obviously. It's like, how is that such a remarkable thing is to just ask to be treated like a human being? It seems very basic, but here we are.
Well, when you have a punishment-based system, people, and this is one of the things I think that became so clear to me. Being put in prison is the punishment. being separated from your family, your friends, your freedom is the punishment. Nothing needs to be added to that. You could have a comfortable bed, you could have good food, you could have education. All of that does not take away from the fact you're being punished. So the idea that we have here, that somehow punishment includes deprivation, inhuman treatment, that you have to add to that layer of what's already happened by being locked away, is one of the great fallacies, and it's one of the things that has to change. These are real human beings, and the reason that the system fails is because we're doing it that way.
Right. Yeah. Clearly something's wrong. If the statistics you were saying earlier, it's like, well, obviously it's not working, the way it should. That's an interesting insight. Thank you.
Yeah. What did these men teach you about yourself?
Boy, I feel that, first of all, my assumptions about people. I remember a boss of mine one time saying, I was managing a nightclub, and he said, just assume that every person that walks through the door is an a-hole, and then occasionally you have a nice surprise. And I had pretty much worked on that basis. My guard was up with people, and then if you proved yourself, okay. And this turned me around so much, because here are the people that I would initially think probably I was going to have a problem with, and then I saw something so deep. So that was a huge transformation to me. I think another thing that changed in me, while I'd always loved the arts and felt that, just drawn to theater and film and acting all my life, that the power that art has, that when a person, a simple example, a person gets a script and is going to play a character, and you say to them, what do you think this person is feeling? How should I know? Well, try and think. I don't do that. Well, try and step inside and see, I don't like this guy. Oh, it's okay. You don't like him, but step inside and see, why do you think he's doing what he's doing right now? That little step, when taken, is a beginning step in empathy. And it is such a transformational thing. And I would watch the men who came into the program with that initial resistance and then starting to play a character. And then I'd hear them saying to the other guys, well, what do you think your character is feeling? And that transformed into, what are you feeling? And it was, we underestimate all over the place how powerful art is. And so its role in my life has become greatly enhanced because of what was there.
Yeah.
And then I think just that human to human connection that you sometimes think may not happen, that it can happen, and you can have that kind of friendship that is so deep and so transformational in both directions, back and forth, it just makes life better.
I agree.
I love that last part, man. I mean, I'm having a tough time with this conversation in a wonderful way, because my heart breaks for these men. I picture them as children, and some of the things that maybe that they experienced, and the trauma that maybe they experienced, and not every road is straight and easy.
For sure.
And I think you probably encountered a lot of people who had the odds stacked up against them from the very beginning. And, were maybe at times forced to make very difficult choices.
Yeah, and the horror is that we're stacking the odds higher for people right now. This, cut the taxes for the rich and and let them have their billions and their yachts and their whatever, and cut food stamps and cut health insurance and cut education insurance and anything else that benefits people, and make it look like somehow they're the lazy ones, they're the ones living off of society. It's hideous. It's going to show itself in a generation of what that has brought about because of the situations that it's putting people in.
Mm-hmm.
And we could have had something so different, because a fair system makes fair people.
For sure.
And the stories that I heard that these men would tell me casually about their backgrounds would leave me with my jaw dropping. And I never left Sing Sing once. I taught there for over 10 years. I never left Sing Sing once without crying when I walked outside, because I realized that the men that I cared for so much were going back to a 6x9, and I was going home to my wife and a life. And, you know, to see them now, and to see them in that movie, and to see them living their lives now, nothing gives me greater joy, because of the contrast to what was once. But there's a whole new generation of people inside.
Yeah.
And it has gotten more difficult, angrier. What I hear now in terms of the challenges being faced within the programs, it's greater, because these people are now coming out of the situations that have been caused by this current political insanity.
Yeah. It's interesting, you know, you're shining a light through personal stories on a very systemic problem. And, you know, speaking to the power of the arts, I feel like that's one of the things that, you know, for those of us who are looking for agency in a very, very strange time and chaotic time and problematic time, I feel like shining a light on individuals who are doing well, despite of all of it, and also those who are like yourself, who are helping them to do well, is really the most power that we have, frankly. And you know, thank you for that, and thank you for. That's a tireless job, I'm sure. It's you know, like it's probably, you know, you're talking about leaving a place where you're developing very deep connections for 10 years and crying every single time you leave. That's very powerful. That's not something to be taken lightly. And you know, there's the old, I go back to this all the time. My kids are probably very tired of hearing it, but you go back to the Mr. Rogers statement of look for the helpers. When everything's going wrong and all the things that are bad are happening, as life has shown us all as adults especially, look for the helpers. And Brent, we found a helper, and we look to you, and we thank you so much for not only telling their story but telling yours.
A pleasure.
That we appreciate that, and we want to put a spotlight, however small we have. We want to put our spotlight on that. So thank you very much.
If I could end on a smile,
I would love it.
I remember I was leaving the prison, and the corrections officer at the front said, "You have a call from the superintendent," and I picked up. And he goes, "Buell, I hope to God you know what you're doing." He said, "You just let the most dangerous man in Sing Sing into your program." And I said, "He'll be fine." And, you know, he was quiet, he was surly, everything. Within 6 months, that man was one of the leaders of the program that changed his whole life. He's now running a big program at Columbia University. And that, you know, to see that is just like, you talk about putting a smile on your face. That's and we can all do this. Mm-hmm. We can, if we treat other people like human beings, we can all do this. This is our job. This is what we can do.
I love it. Tim, you okay?
No, I have nothing else to say, man. It's awesome, and that's such an awesome testament to your work and to your mission.
For sure.
And you're right, 100%. Everybody has the power to transform.
And thank you for the opportunity of being on today. I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.
Oh man, the pleasure is ours, Brent.
Seriously.
This is amazing. We know that you have a lot on your plate and a lot of. I know you're doing another podcast. I think later this week you mentioned with Ben and Jerry. Is that correct?
Oh, so just those guys.
Man. Yeah. Well, can you do us a favor when you get on? Let them know you were just on the Tim and Trav podcast. Okay.
I will let them know.
Well, while we're doing plugs here, I do have a request. So I personally watch Sing Sing on HBO, and then so I want to definitely tell people where we can find that. Everyone, it's streaming. I know it's streaming in a few places, right?
It's streaming on HBO Max. Mm-hmm. It's streaming on Amazon. Pay for play. Mm-hmm. And some other platforms too, I believe.
I think so too. And then also you were mentioning Freedom for All.
Yes.
Can you tell us real quick just when that will be out and where to find it?
I don't know exactly what the release date is.
Okay.
It's in post-production now.
Cool.
So we're very much at work on finishing it.
Great.
And hopefully that'll be in festivals later this year. So
Great.
We're looking forward to that very, very much.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, yes, speaking personally, I can't recommend it enough. A great feel-good story in Sing Sing, and thank you so much for your work on it, and obviously work outside of it leading up to it. So that was great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this has been such an inspiring conversation, Brent. Thank you for letting us capture this time and your story, and it means a lot to us, truly.
It's a real pleasure.
All right, Brent, thank you so much for your time, and it's overwhelming, to be honest. After we recorded this, Tim, I don't know if you felt this way, but I needed a minute. I was like, yeah. I don't know that there's anything that can cut that deep in terms of like the human spirit and tenacity and just the absolute rawness of it. And I think, as we mentioned in the interview too, if you haven't seen Sing Sing, you should really watch it. It's a really interesting look into a very specific part of our justice system in terms of corrections, if you want to call it that. And it's a really interesting look. It's very well acted. It's very well done. And Brent is to thank for that, along with his team.
Yeah, you're right, man. I mean, I left the interview kind of in the same space. I was really trying to just grapple with everything that he shared with us. And I was so in awe and inspired and challenged by, his work and his effort. I pictured him walking into that room for the first time.
Totally.
And did he say, I can't remember exactly, but around 50 or so men in that room, right? Yeah. All inmates, and he's walking in there for the first time. I think the only white man walking into this room for the first time. Mm-hmm. And what does that feel like? I mean, how many people actually have the courage to do something like that? And then to lead and maintain a commitment and to lead and, the things that he's learned through that experience, the people that he's met through that experience, there's just so much beauty surrounding all of it.
For sure.
And so much pain.
Totally. You can tell it's impacted him too, it's absolutely made an impression on him, even to this many years later.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I am so grateful to know him and so grateful that we had an opportunity to just capture that small ounce of, his work and his commitment. And
for sure.
Yeah, that was an impactful conversation.
Yeah, and it's funny too, going into it, I was kind of wondering, I think this is the first time we've interviewed anybody who's been portrayed on film. Yeah. For one thing. And that was like the most glossy version of all of it. You know what I mean? It was like, oh yeah, well, Yeah. It's like there's so much more to this we have to get into.
Well, I love the questions that you were asking him, though, with your film and TV background and the things that, the way that you were looking at it. It was a really unique lens that I don't have. And so it was really cool to kind of, witness the two of you go back and forth on some of those points. And yeah, I mean, the fact that the majority of the guys in that film are former inmates that came back to do it again. And what does that look like?
Well, and he made such an interesting point about that too, about in terms of almost the chance or the risk of re-traumatizing them. That didn't even cross my mind. They did such a good job with it on the film, and it was like, oh man, I didn't even normally you're working with actors and who knows if they have that in their past, but definitely not to that personal of a level. And it was like, man, that's, whew. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Just an incredible person in Brent, and we thank him very much.
Yeah, thank you, Brent.
Sure.
That was very kind of him to carve some time out of his day to talk to us two studs.
I'm sure he was just as in awe of us as he.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Hey, before we go, though, I do have a question, because you asked a really interesting question of him. And being around that area, I want to ask you the same thing. It's a two-parter. First of all, what is your impression of Sing Sing as someone who's relatively close to it geographically?
Yeah, I didn't even know about it, to be honest with you. I'm sure that I heard about it in the past, but I it either slipped my memory or I just don't. It's not part of my day-to-day activity. So
Gotcha.
It is a little bit further away from where I am in Central Jersey. But, the stories that he shared in terms of like the experience and the people and the trauma that they had gone through, that all made a lot of sense to me.
Oh,
because,
for sure.
we deal with folks like that all the time now, and they're good people.
Sure.
But Sing Sing in and of itself, I wasn't aware of. I was like just floored when he talked about the dimensions of those cells when they first were building that building. Crazy, man.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal. I mean, I think he used this word too. It's just inhumane. You know what I mean? It's like, and I think, to drive it home a little bit more, I think that's the thing that really impacted me about this conversation as well as the film, is just it adds a level of humanity to it that we're really quick to dismiss because it's not right in front of us,
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really cool. And we'll put the links down in the show notes for where to find it and some of Brent's other projects and so forth. He's obviously a very passionate person with a lot of talent, so he's worth a follow for sure.
He's done a lot of stuff, man.
He has.
It's a lot to keep track of, but he's a productive human being, that's for sure.
That's for sure. That's a good way to put it, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, that wraps up another good episode. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Keep, so many guests ahead that are just like so outstanding and great. If you're interested in joining us, please do write in. If you have someone who you think would be a great guest, let us know. We'd love to connect with them and capture their story. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Trav, thanks so much for your time, man. It's good to see you.
You too, buddy. Thank you.
Tim and Travis on the mic, talking life and what's it like. Middle age, it's quite the ride. Finding joy and chasing pride. Career dreams and daily grind. Funny moments that we find. Letting go of yesterday, making paths along the way. Middle age. Middle-age mayhem, breaking free, finding out who we can be, laughing, learning all the time. Tim and Travis in their prime. Every step a brand new plan, older, wiser, still we stand, navigating through the years, sharing stories, laughs and cheers. Finding out who we can be, laughing, learning all the time. Tim and Travis in their prime. Every step a brand new plan, older, wiser, still we stand, navigating through the years, sharing stories, laughs and cheers. Middle age, enjoying the fun, middle age has just begun. Tim and Travis lead the way, every episode will slay.
Let's do it. We're a pro studio. I'm sure Ben and Jerry have the same problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
It's just, that's an area where we both are failures. Weird.
You're just an overgrown kid now.
Exactly.
Let me try that again.